What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. Just got out of seeing X from writer-director Ty West, and not to worry, this review will be 100% spoiler-free, but I do want to share a few favorable impressions of the movie because I think this is probably going to end up being one of the more entertaining movies that I've seen or that I will see in all of 2022. For people who have not been paying attention, Ty West for like the last 15 years or so has been kind of slowly and quietly amassing a really good filmography, which consists mostly but not exclusively of really cool horror movies. And I've seen the majority, but I won't claim to have seen everything because he's directed a ton of TV as well. I mean, if you look at his IMDb page, it's episodes of Tales from the Loop and episodes of Soundtrack and episodes of The Resident. I mean, you can tell he's been doing a lot of work for hire all over the place. But as far as his, his own projects are concerned, I've seen his big breakout movie, The House of the Devil, back in 2009, which I really enjoyed. Saw The Innkeepers, which strong contender for his scariest. I've seen his shorts from the ABCs of Death and VHS, and I've seen The Sacrament. Sacrament's probably my least favorite just because I'm so sick of found footage horror movies. They always kind of fall to pieces at a certain point when you're trying to figure out how do we suspend the disbelief of the camera always being able to capture all the action. At any rate, the reason I mention all of these other movies is because when I say I think X might be his most entertaining movie, I want you to know that I mean it. And if you're not familiar with the premise for X, it's real simple, and the Red Band trailer pretty much tells you all you need to know. A small crew heads out into bumfuck Texas to make a porno film, and pretty much everything goes to hell because they have chosen to rent facilities, or no, facility is a strong word. They've chosen to rent like a barn and a cabin at the most fucked up place they possibly could have chosen outside of the residence for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. For the first half of the movie or so, it's pretty much just this wild romp as we get this behind-the-scenes look at the making of some ridiculous premise for a porno film. But, if you like kind of late 70s, early 80s erotica, it has, there's a certain novelty or charm to that style of filmmaking. I'm not entirely sure what year this movie takes place in, but it's right where film is starting to make the conversion over to video, so probably late 70s, or at least based on the fashion sense. But here's the official synopsis as written on IMDb. In 1979, there it is, a group of young filmmakers set out to make an adult film in rural Texas, but when their reclusive elderly hosts catch them in the act, the cast finds themselves fighting for their lives. And there it is. That's pretty much all you need to know. And throughout the first half, some horrific elements are kind of teased or suggested, and then in the second half of the movie, the gloves come off and there's just gore in abundance, bloodshed, murder, mayhem, so on and so forth. Like I said, the Red Band trailer for X is just pure dynamite and tells you all you need to know going into this. And the reason I say this might be Ty West's most entertaining movie, well, first and foremost, the dialogue's pretty goddamn funny throughout. But a lot of Ty West movies have been criticized and praised for the fact that, like, for the first hour or so, they tend to be this like long, slow burn, and then you're almost like a frog boiling in a kettle where you don't even notice that the temperature of the water's changing, and then suddenly he cranks things up, and he's got a lot of defenders, and he's also got a lot of haters. I can see both points of view. Like when I was watching The Innkeepers for the first time, I was like, this isn't scary at all. I was sitting there with like the lights on and just being totally cocky. But then suddenly when it started to get scary, I was like, whoa! I was like, screaming out loud and losing my mind. And I have to admit that Ty West is he's very good at getting under my skin and surprising me, at least when he's firing on all cylinders. But X is not really that scary. It's just tons of fun. At least it's tons of fun for people who like generous quantities of horror and or gore, as well as a little sex. And for people who've been following my channel for a while, you might have seen my top 10 erotic horror movies video that I did a couple years ago, but now it's one of my top 20 videos, so I'll include a link to that in the video notes. But for me, sex and horror always go together like chocolate and peanut butter. There's nothing quite like the mix of allure and dread when you see a beautiful, scantily clad lady in a perilous situation. And this movie features a couple of really fun pump fakes. But what makes this movie so fun is how game the main actresses are. Mia Goth, Jenny Ortega, and Brittany Snow. And you can tell they're just having the time of their lives making this movie. It helps that all three of these actresses are just astonishingly beautiful in their own way. And part of me kind of wishes that this movie wasn't even a horror movie at all. Part of me wishes that they just made this like an erotic movie. I mean, the setting and the performers I would make a case that the erotic ingredients of the movie are more interesting than the horrific ingredients, and that's probably just because Ty West, he knows where to place the camera. No one's ever going to criticize him of not shooting his movies beautifully, and I would argue that this is his most beautifully shot movie yet. And it's cool as hell seeing Ty West working with A24, because A24, of all the kind of brands that remain, all the studios that are out there, I think they probably have the best, well-earned reputation for taste and exciting, dynamic movies. And I absolutely despise the phrase art house horror or elevated horror, basically the kind of phrasing that allows critics to praise a horror movie without feeling as if like they're going slumming by approving of, this kind of, tawdry, trashy genre. For me, if you love horror, just lean into it and embrace it. I don't divide horror between kind of mainstream horror and art house horror. For me, there's just horror. But if you want to divide it into categories, there's the horror that sucks, which is the majority of horror movies that get made, and that's kind of the way it always will be. And then you have those rare, precious few where every once in a while a horror movie just comes through and just like a bolt of lightning hits you right in the head. And A24, very wisely over the last couple of years, has been getting behind some really interesting filmmakers like Ari Aster, who made Hereditary and Midsommar. Those are probably two of the best examples. And there'll probably be some people who feel like this movie does not quite earn its title X. But as is revealed in the trailer, when they talk about X, they're talking about the X factor that certain performers can have in their chosen, profession, whether it's as a singer or as an adult performer, or as an actress or whatever. So it's a little bit of a pump fake where you think, oh yeah, they're going to be shooting an X-rated movie and I'm going to see some X-rated entertainment. The movie doesn't go that far, but like I said, there is skin, and whether you're interested in seeing the ladies or the fellas or a bit of both, this movie aims to please on all fronts. So that wouldn't be my criticism. My main criticism of this movie is kind of the same criticism that I have for a lot of Ty West movies, where I always feel like there's something missing at the end, like one final twist, one final revelation, something deeper. I feel like whatever the horror might be, depending upon the movie, there's not a lot of there for like deeper exploration or repeat viewings. And so I always come away from his movies not disappointed, but just feeling like he could have gone just a little bit further. But on the other hand, I know a lot of people love and defend his movies precisely because of their sense of restraint, because he's an absolute master at mood and tension and suspense and really subtle effects. And along those lines, I don't know if this is going to be the case with every print of the film that's out there, or the DCP, or whatever you want to call it, but the version of the movie that I saw at Regal had closed captioning, and I'm not talking about just subtitles. I'm talking about every single music cue, every single sound effect, every single time a cricket chirps or a character breathes or ominous music begins, there was a big giant subtitle alerting us to the fact, usually about a half second to a second before it even happened. So I came very close to walking out of the movie entirely because it was so distracting. I knew it was going to reduce the overall impact of the movie for me. Because once again, Ty West is a very subtle filmmaker who is playing a long game with the way he teases out certain effects. And if every single time some chilling music is about to be heard or some ominous breathing is about to be heard, we get spoiled a split second ahead of time by a title card, the nice way of saying it, it's a distraction. For me, it was just annoying as fucking hell. And I did a little digging. I know that a lot of theaters offer that as an option where they'll basically give you a device for the hearing impaired so that they can understand what's going on with the movie, and I'm all for it. But for anybody out there who's seen this movie at an AMC or a smaller art house theater, let me know if you had the same experience, because moving forward, I'm going to be doing a lot more research about the way these movies are going to be projected ahead of time, because I will not go see movies, especially horror movies, if they're going to be closed captioned. It just ruins the effect. So what else can I say about this? I haven't got attention yet specifically to Kid Cudi or Cudi. I'm not quite sure how his last name is pronounced, but I'm assuming it's Cudi. He plays the character Jackson. Funny as hell, great character, as well as Martin Henderson, who plays Wayne. Loved him as well. And I enjoyed seeing Owen Campbell as RJ, basically this pretentious filmmaker who's trying to turn this sleazy porno film into some sort of art house classic. But if you're a fan of the process of making movies, the history of movies, you can tell that Ty West is trying to pour all of his love and affection for the medium into this movie. And I hope that he'll continue to make movies with A24 for a good long while, because it had been a while since his last feature. If I'm not overlooking anything, it looks like In a Valley of Violence in 2016 was his last feature film. So it's been a nice 6-year gap. And before that, it had been The Sacrament in 2013. And I get it. Everybody's got to pay the bills, and I'm thrilled that he's getting all these opportunities directing for all these TV shows. But Ty West is a really talented director, and the horror genre doesn't have but so many really talented directors out there. So for me, I mean, if he wants to spend the next 30, 40 years of his life making more and more horror movies, go to it. I'll applaud him every time, because even his movies that I like less, like The Sacrament, always have some ingredients that I find to be disturbing or mysterious, or whatever the case might be. I still need to see Cabin Fever 2, Spring Fever. I don't know why that didn't appeal to me when it first came out. Probably because I felt like I got all the cabin fever that I needed out of the original Eli Roth Cabin Fever, but I didn't need to go back and watch a second one. But who knows? It might be fantastic. I should go back and have a look for myself. So in closing, I'll just say X is a very fun time at the movies, especially if you lean into your R-rated entertainment. Mia Goth is just so easy on the eyes, and she spends like 99% of the movie walking around in these overalls with nothing else on, and you can't see anything scandalous, but it's very suggestive. And so I spent the entire movie basically like drooling on my shoulder, just like, salivating over the physical beauty of Mia Goth. But at this point, she's been making movies for like 10 years. I mean, going back to Lars von Trier and Nymphomaniac, she was fantastic in that as well. I really like her choices. If you look at Mia Goth's filmography, she's always leaning into these really edgy, kind of disturbing movies, and some are better than others, but she's at least making the attempt. So high five to Mia Goth for starring in this very cool flick. And with so many kind of family-friendly PG-13 movies on the calendar for the rest of the year, there's a very good chance that X might end up on my top 10 list at the end of the year, because this is my sweet spot. I love sex. I love horror. This movie gives us generous quantities of both. So bravo to the cast and crew. I'm a fan, I enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be watching it again, but probably on Blu-ray with that goddamn closed captioning turned off. So that's my final word on X. Go see it if this all sounds like something that ordinarily would appeal to you. But I can't thank you enough for listening to my review. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell to be notified for future content. But I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and I'll be back tomorrow with a review of Deep Water, the new Adrian Lyne film starring Ana de Armas. I've been hearing some kind of tepid reviews, so I'm kind of dreading going into it. At any rate, that is another, video for another day. For now, I'm signing off. Go see X. Thanks so much for watching, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.